Australia has sent Ukraine the first batch of dozens of U.S.-built M1A1 Abrams tanks that it had promised Kyiv for its fight against Russian aggression, according to the Defense Ministry in Canberra. Ukraine's ally in the South Pacific announced that Kyiv had received the majority of the 49 decommissioned tanks it had pledged, with the rest scheduled to arrive later this year. The delivery follows reported delays due to initial resistance from the U.S. about the American vehicles. Australia is one of Ukraine's largest non-NATO partners and has been supplying Kyiv with assistance, ammunition, and defense equipment since the beginning of the war. The delivery of main battle tanks could be a battlefield boost for Ukraine as it awaits further pledges of military support from U.S. President Donald Trump. Australia is providing 49 Abrams tanks to Ukraine to help its fight against Russia as part of a pledge it made in October. The delivery was delayed because of objections from the U.S., the Australian Broadcasting Corporation reported, citing unnamed defense officials. Washington had warned Canberra against sending the tanks, and Trump's decision to pause military aid earlier this year may also have added to complications, according to the Australian outlet. Experts have voiced concerns about their battlefield effectiveness due to the vulnerabilities of the tank's roof to drones. However, the Australian Defense Ministry said on Friday that most of the tanks had been shipped to Ukraine, adding to the mobility and firepower of Kyiv's forces. The rest are set to arrive in the coming months. Ukraine also awaits additional military aid pledged by Trump on the 7th of July when he unveiled a plan to funnel weapons to Ukraine via a NATO and EU-backed program. Retired U.S. Vice Admiral Robert Murrett told Newsweek that Washington's decision to provide more arms to Ukraine, mostly through European allies, was a good step, although the Kremlin is still convinced that conditions on the ground are working in its favor. Despite high Russian losses, Moscow is not interested in a ceasefire, in spite of Kyiv's willingness to accept such a move, added Murrett, the deputy director at Syracuse University's Institute for Security Policy and Law. He continued, "Both sides are likely to sustain the fight and keep a close eye on arms, prospective additional sanctions and military activity in the skies and front lines in Ukraine." Australian Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles said, "The M1A1 Abrams tanks will make a significant contribution to Ukraine's ongoing fight against Russia's illegal and immoral invasion." Australian Defence Industry Minister Pat Conroy said, "These modified M1A1 Abrams tanks will deliver more firepower and more mobility to the Ukrainian armed forces." Australia said it would ship the rest of the Abrams tanks to Ukraine later this year. Kyiv also awaits other U.S. weapons. The Wall Street Journal reported on Friday that its next Patriot air defense system, promised by Trump, would be sent to Germany rather than Switzerland to speed up its transfer to Ukraine.